Howdy, y'alls. It's me, Dr. E, here to give you a walkthrough through our first theme, theme one, week one. Um, make sure to read the written portion of my announcement, but because every student learns differently, I always try to, include both a written overview as well as a video to go with it. I often suggest checking them both out, right? Uh, you know, uh, it's just good practice. This theme is all about kind of introducing you to the social sciences, right? Um, and we have three main ones that we use in this class, right? Psychology, sociology, and anthropology. Okay? Now, psychology. A basic definition of it is it's the scientific study of individual behavior and mental processes. Okay? Psychologists look at the dynamic relationships between behavior and mental processes, right? It's about the relationship between the two. A good example is a psychologist might study why a person feels the way they do about a particular thing, and or how traumatic events, both emotional and physical, impact a person's behavior. All right. An exemplar of that is PTSD. It has clear impacts on a person's, daily life, their behavior. It's incredibly difficult. But I don't want to try to go off about explaining PTSD or anything. I'm just using it as an example that a psychologist might study such things, right? And it helps illustrate the key points that I was just highlighting. Sociology, right? It's the scientific study of society. Right? That sounds like a ridiculous definition, I know, but that is the definition of sociology, the scientific study of society. It also focuses on behavior and dynamic relationships, but it focuses at the societal level. Right? Psychologists tend to focus on the individual and group. Okay. Sociologists tend to focus at a societal scale, right? For example, U.S. society. Okay, you might think of nations as representing societies. They do. However, societies can also be much smaller than a nation. It could be a rural community in Africa, or Asia, or India. Okay. Yeah, you get the idea. But it's not an individual or small group. It's a much larger group, a societal group. And so they study social collectives and their dynamics, including social roles, norms, and norms that are associated with human behavior. Okay, and I'll get into what like social roles are and norms here in a minute. So a good example of something a sociologist might study is the rise of the alt-right in American society, or racism in our Western education system. Okay? There are so many you could pick from. Okay, that's the wonderful thing about social sciences is if it has to do with people, the world's your oyster. Right? Now, moving on to my personal discipline, okay, which is anthropology. It's the scientific study of humanity from the past to the present. Okay. And it actually has specific subfields. You don't need to know this for this class, but I figure since I'm an anthropologist, I might as well share. We have biological anthropology. It studies things like human evolution, adaptations to unique environmental circumstances, If you've ever seen Bones, the show, she's a forensic anthropologist. Also a biological anthropologist. She actually studies, criminal actions on humans, okay, often resulting in their death, right? And she studies the human remains and all the surrounding evidence, forensics, biological anthropology. But, biological anthropology also, strongly focuses on where humans came from, right? Our evolutionary history, going back to our ancient ancestors that started walking upright, okay, in Africa. So, archaeology. Archaeology is the study of past societies and cultures through their material remains. Pretty much what we find of them. Okay, they're no longer present; they are gone. Right. So all we have to work with is the stuff that we can find, the physical stuff. So think of the pyramids in Egypt, right? The ancient Egyptians are no longer present, right? And so archaeologists attempt to understand what ancient Egypt was like from the things that they left behind. Okay. I've worked extensively as an archaeologist in my career. I love it. There is something really special about holding a piece of history in your hands, and just imagining who the last person was that touched that. All right. All right, moving on. Cultural anthropology. Very similar to sociology. In fact, there's a key specialization called sociocultural anthropology. But yeah, cultural anthropology studies the unique and shared social and cultural habits of people, such as kinship, marriage, politics, subsistence systems, and belief systems, right? Uh, Pretty much, culture is how we define the world. Right, we are all enculturated to, wherever you grew up, who your parents were, who your influences were. Those all influenced how you see the world today. Uh, and so, cultural anthropologists specialize in studying, researching, and understanding those processes. The final subfield of anthropology is linguistics. They study human language. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. Um, yeah, it's the most complex form of communication that we know. It is, well, as I like to say, culture is language, language is culture. If you've ever learned another language, you never really learn it until you start thinking in it. Okay? Not translating your own language into the other language, then saying that. No. But actually processing the language as it is spoken. Uh, and it's also a really incredible thing, right? Because the words that we use to describe things is how we understand things, and that is entirely cultural. So yeah, linguistics, super cool stuff. Moving on, let's get to our key principles, right? And those include social norms, social institutions, beliefs and values, and social roles. Four. So let's take on social norms. Okay. Now, social norms are the attitudes and behaviors that are considered acceptable within a society. Right. And I'm going to point out a key concept to keep in mind here: relativism. Any norm for a society is not necessarily going to be the same for another society. All right, that is relativism. Social norms are relatives to the groups that practice them, okay, or to the groups that have them. Um, so, Let me give you some quick basic examples of what a social norm is, right? Like here in our society, it's a social norm for a student to raise their hand to answer or respond to a question in class, right? Say in a brick and mortar class, not necessarily online, all right? Here we use discussion boards and emails and yada yada. Similarly, when you meet a new person, it is a social norm to introduce yourself to them. Okay. Now, let me give you kind of a cool example about relative social norms. Okay. And our text doesn't really cover relativity very well. It suggests some things, but I want to make it nice and clear for you. Okay. So here in the U.S., if you were to meet somebody, okay, somebody new, you would probably stick your hand out and shake the other person's hand while introducing yourself. I am Ian Edwards. Pleased to meet you. Okay. It may not be exactly how you do it, but, something in that ballpark. It is considered an acceptable behavior, a social norm. Now, let me take you to West Africa. When meeting someone new there, you do not just reach out and, shake their hand and tell them your name. All right? No. It actually starts with, there's lots of different ways it can start. Pretty much anytime I go out over there, I'm like in town or in the village or something, and people will greet me. They'll say hi, and I say hi back, and then we come together, and I'll often be questioned, what's your last name? What's your family name? And I'll say my West African family name is Jara. And if there's a history between, whoever's asking me what my family name is and my family, all right, then all sorts of crazy things can happen, right? It's called Joking Cousins. It's crazy cool. Look it up on the internet if you want to learn more about it. But essentially, we get in an insulting contest, right? And it starts out really kind of mild. Say, for example, the person who's asking me my last name, if they are a Dembele or a Traore, they actually used to take slaves of one another, all right? Dembélés, Traorés used to take Jaras as slaves. Jaras used to take Dembélés and Traorés as slaves. And so this is all about recognizing that historical relationship. And this is just about introducing yourself, okay? So there's this whole historical component that's being thrown in. And then you got to prove yourself, okay, by insulting the other person. Oh, you're a Traoré, you eat beans. And that doesn't mean that you fart. Okay, no. It means that you're poor, because in West Africa, poor people eat beans. People that can afford to eat rice. All right, beans cost less than rice. So yeah, that's a little cultural interpretation for you. And he might come back and say that I'm like the king of beans. And it'll progress and get more and more elaborate and detailed. In several instances, it has progressed to where my sister is being insulted and called a snake, and I have to return with, well, your sister sleeps with four-legged animals, and in the end, you earn prestige. Right? Depending on how well you play the game of insults. It's a wild ride. And in the very end, after you've gone through all of that, they'll finally ask, what's your name? All right, and I'll be like, oh, my name is Papu. That's my Malayan name, West African name. Uh, and then an entire relationship has been established, and from then forth, anytime I meet that person, right, just to add to it, I have to inquire about his entire family. It's not just like, hey, great to see you again. Like, no, good to see you. How's your mom? How's your dad? Right? How's your wife? How are your kids? How's your uncle? All right. And go on and on and on like that. So, greeting people, greeting norms surrounding how you introduce yourself to someone are entirely relative to the society in which they occur. Okay? Moving on. Social institutions. These are complex patterns of norms and behaviors that are governed by specific rules. For this class, we focus on 5 key social institutions: government, family, economics, religion, and education. Okay? And so just think of any one of those. Right? Government. It is a complex system full of unique patterns of norms and behaviors, right? And there's all sorts of rules associated with it, right? You can't act certain ways in the government, right? If you're a public servant, you are expected to behave in particular ways. Okay, so you see how the norms are included there? And for government, we can expand this to they are large, complex, bureaucratic systems, right, which are designed to regulate society. Ooh, okay. So patterns of behaviors, key rules, all of that, right in there. You can do the same for family, economics, religion, education, right? They are all complex institutions. There's no other word for it, right? Institutions that have complex patterns of norms and behaviors associated with them, right? In your family, we may have, there's all sorts of different types of families. Okay, but regardless, within that, there's going to be a social hierarchy. Okay, there's going to be key norms and behaviors associated with each role in that hierarchy. Okay, yeah, I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to save that for when we start, delving into those specific concepts later on. Right now, I'm just trying to give you a quick intro to the concept and give you some insights to help you better understand it. Okay, so let's move on to our next one. Beliefs and values. These are cultural ideals that society tries to maintain. Okay? But this is a fact. Nothing is static. Nothing stays the same. Everything changes. So, while culture is constantly changing, people within a given culture will try to hold on to their cultural ideals, beliefs, and values. Okay? And they pass those on across generations. I mean, just think about it. Think about yourselves. Think about your families. And, or maybe the region you come from. These beliefs and values are fundamental to how we see and understand the world around us and how we understand our place in it. Okay, I don't want to go too off on the deep end there. It's important to recognize that beliefs and values and cultural ideals, one of the reasons they change is because societal wants and needs change through time. Okay? I don't know, let's look at religion. Pick any given religion. I'm not going to name one. You pick one. That religion is not the same as it once was. It has changed through history to what you see it as today. And if you looked even closer, you could identify key historic events that influenced those changes. Okay? Yeah. So, always keep that in mind. While we try to hold on to cultural ideals, there's this constant process of change that's always going on. There's no getting away from it. And it's dynamic. It's fluid. It's beautiful, if you ask me. But go figure. I'm an anthropologist. So yeah, I'll get more into that later. Social roles. This is an important one. Okay, well, they're all important, but this one helps you better understand some of the others. Right? Social roles are context specific and outline what is expected of an individual or group. Okay? For an example, let's use a family as an example. A father is expected to do A, B, C, and X, Y, Z, but not Q, R, S. All right? It's important, any role, any social role has its boundaries. It has prescription for what you're supposed to do, all right? And there's often consequences associated if you cross those boundaries, all right? You'll be called out. Like, hey, who are you to say that? Okay? That's a direct reflection of you breaking the boundaries of your social role within a given context. Okay? You can think of professions. You can think of religious figures. There are so many, a CEO of a business has a social role. Interestingly, he has a social role within the company, right? And he has social roles outside of that, okay? So any given individual, all right, will have multiple social roles that are relative to unique circumstances, okay? Like, I don't know, I know when I went to college, went off to do my BA, I left my family and I no longer had to behave in certain ways. Rather, I had a whole lot of freedom and a lot of time to express myself. Okay? So yeah, perfect example, the situation changed and my social roles also changed with it. I became a student, and all the things that go along with being a college student. Sorry, I get really excited about this stuff. Let me move on, because I want to highlight some key things that are in our text. There are several excellent case studies that you should really take time and focus on, right? Because what they do is show you the value of these key concepts and principles that we just went over, okay? And hint, wink, wink, those are the things that you're going to need to be able to do for your project. See how this all works? There's a case study about Dan Buettner's National Geographic articles from 2005. I actually have a link directly to them in the written portion of the announcement. It's all about blue zones, which are areas where people live longer. Okay? And the question is, why do the people live longer? And we kind of explore the key principles, all right, from our different social science perspectives. Really good stuff. There's a great case study of social institutions in India. All right, they focus on their caste system and the impact of colonialism on it. All right. As somebody who's worked extensively in developing countries, the impact of colonialism cannot be understated. It literally redefined the entire face of the world. And it's still as present today as it was back in 1800, let me tell you. There's a great case study about the social norms of Dubai. There's also a really cool download of, like, it's the official code of conduct. If you are in Dubai, this is how you have to behave, right? Read it. You will be surprised. But it's a great example about social norms. There's another great case study about Papua New Guinea. It focuses on the factors that influence social roles. It gives great insights into them. It also touches on the principles that I just outlined. Next thing. Definitely check out Learning Block 1.4, page 1, performing a research investigation. There's a slideshow there that outlines the basic steps of conducting a research investigation, right? It's the same process you are going to use for your project, okay? Definitely check it out. Now, let me get on to this week's assignments. Let's see here. You have a discussion all about relating to the social sciences. What I will say here is check out my initial thoughts post. For every discussion we have, before it even opens, I have a post there that you want to check out, right? It's called Some Initial Thoughts. And in that post, I outline how to approach and execute the discussion, right? So I would pay attention to those. Definitely do so for our first discussion. Next assignment. Test Your Understanding 1. This is in our Mind Edge resource. All right. It's in Learning Block 1.4, page 4. You will have to complete this by the end of Sunday this week. All right. Next up, 1.4, week 1 short responses. In our Mind Edge resource for this week, there are 21 short response questions, right? You need to respond to each and every one of them. You'll notice in our resource that they're presented to you like after you've done reading associated with them, and I really suggest you kind of draft an initial response right then and there, right? It'll save it for you, okay? And then at the end of the week 1 section, all of your drafts will be there waiting for you to revise and or, edit, to put the finishing touches on, okay? It's a smart strategy, okay? Makes less work for you. Definitely check out the short response guidelines and rubric. I got that embedded in the written portion below. There's also additional exercises in our Mind Edge resource. There are games. I think I already said something about this, but they're for your benefit. Right? You score those games perfectly, that tells you have a firm understanding of the concept at hand, right? What better could you ask for, right? You have immediate feedback if you understand it or not, right? And if you don't, right, I'm here. And I can't tell you, I strongly value being able to help my students. If you have any issues whatsoever, right, contact me immediately. My phone number's posted, my email's posted, and let me know what's up. If you do this, I promise I will do my best to accommodate your needs. Right? Now, if you don't, that creates a problem. I'm not trying to sound harsh or anything, but it's just the facts. If you're having issues, you're having trouble, you have questions but don't ask them, well, that's only going to hurt you. Do it. I promise I don't bite. Okay? My goal here is only to help you, each and every one of you, excel. All right? It's why I love teaching. So, that's where I'll end this. And yes, I've been babbling on for 30 minutes now. I'm sorry. But hopefully all this information helps you. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the discussion boards.